Now, we all know what Cookie Monster likes to eat, but cookies are better as an occasional treat than your sole source of nutrition. In this lecture, we will be reviewing the types of foods that we consume and how they are cultivated and raised. The manner in which we choose to produce food has a clear and important effect on both human health and the environment. Therefore, we must choose wisely or suffer the consequences. The learning outcomes for this lecture are to be able to identify the major food crops that we consume in the United States and to identify the methods that we use to provide meat and seafood to the world population. We will also be learning about the environmental consequences associated with these activities. Of the thousands of edible plants and animals in the world, only a few provide almost all our food. About a dozen types of grasses, 3 root crops, 20 or so fruits and vegetables, 6 mammals, 2 domestic fowl, and a few fish species make up almost all the food we eat. 2 grasses, wheat and rice, are especially important because they are the staple food for most of the 5 billion people in developing countries. In the United States, corn, another grass, also known as maize, and soybeans have become our primary staples. We rarely eat either corn or soybeans directly, but corn provides the corn sweeteners, corn oil, and the livestock feed for producing our beef, chicken, and pork, as well as industrial starches and many synthetic vitamins. Soybeans are also fed to livestock, and soy provides protein and oils for processed foods. Because we have developed so many uses for corn, it now accounts for nearly 2/3 of our bulk commodity crops, which include corn, soy, wheat, rice, and other commodities. Together, corn and soy make up about 85% of the commodity crops with an annual production of 268 million tons of corn and 88 million tons of soy. In the United States, our 3 dominant crops are corn, soybeans, and wheat, and of these, we have seen the greatest increase in corn production. Rice is also another primary food crop. Largely because of dramatic increases in corn and soy production, meat consumption has grown worldwide. In developing countries, meat consumption has risen from just 10 kilograms per person per year in the 1960s to over 26 kilograms today. In the United States, our meat consumption has risen from 90 kilograms to 136 kilograms per person per year in the same 50 years. Meat is a concentrated, high-value source of protein, iron, fats, and other nutrients that give us the energy to lead productive lives. Dairy products are also a key protein source. Globally, we consume more than twice as much dairy as meat. But dairy production per capita has declined slightly, while global meat production has more than doubled in the past 50 years. Meat is a good indicator of wealth because it is expensive to produce in terms of the resources needed to grow an animal. As discussed in Chapter 2, herbivores use most of the energy they consume in growing muscle and bone, moving around, staying warm, and metabolizing or digesting food. Only a little food energy is stored for consumption by carnivores at the next level of the food pyramid. For every 1 kilogram of beef, a steer consumes over 8 kilograms of grain. Meat and dairy consumption has quadrupled in the past years, and China represents about 40% of that increased demand. This figure shows the number of kilograms of grain needed to produce 1 kilogram of bread or 1 kilogram live weight gain. As you can see, only wealthy countries can afford to feed grain that otherwise could go towards feeding people to produce animal protein. This is one of the many reasons that many environmental activists urge the banning of meat production. A number of technological and breeding innovations have made increased meat production possible. One of the most important is the confined animal feeding operation, CAFO. Animals are housed and fed, mainly soy and corn, for rapid growth. These operations dominate livestock raising in the United States, Europe, and increasingly in China and other countries. Animals are housed in giant enclosures with up to 10,000 hogs or a million chickens in an enormous barn complex or 100,000 cattle in a feedlot. Operators feed the animals specially prepared mixes of corn, soy, and animal proteins, parts that can't be sold for human food, that maximizes their growth rate. New breeds of livestock have been developed that produce muscle, meat, rapidly, rather than simply getting fat. The turnaround time is getting shorter too. A U.S. chicken producer can turn baby chicks into chicken nuggets after just 8 weeks of growth. Steers reach full size by just 18 months of age. Increased use of antibiotics, which are mixed in daily feed, make it possible to raise large numbers of animals in close quarters. About 90% of the U.S. hogs receive antibiotics in their feed. Confined animal feeding operations have expanded the global market for corn and soybeans. As we can see in the figure on the right, Brazil's soy production has grown from near zero to being the country's dominant agricultural product, which is used primarily for beef production. Most livestock grown in the United States are raised in large-scale, concentrated animal feeding operations. Up to 1 million animals can be held in a single facility. High population densities require heavy use of antibiotics and can cause severe local air and water pollution. Hormones are used to increase growth rates, often resulting in bones that cannot support the weight of the animal. Animals often die and are trampled underfoot. The 140 million metric tons of seafood we eat every year is an important part of our diet. Seafood provides about 15% of all animal protein eaten by humans, and it is the main animal protein source for about 1 billion people in developing countries. Overharvesting and habitat destruction threaten most of the world's wild fisheries, however. Annual catches of ocean fish rose by about 4% annually between 1950 and 1988. Since 1989, 13 of 17 major marine fisheries have declined dramatically or become commercially unsustainable. According to the United Nations, 3/4 of the world's edible ocean fish, crustaceans, and mollusks are declining and in urgent need of managed conservation. Aquaculture is providing an increased share of the world's seafood. Fish can be grown in farm ponds that take relatively little space but are highly productive. For cultivation of plant-eating fish such as tilapia, these systems can be very sustainable. Cultivation of high-value carnivorous species such as salmon, however, threatens wild fish populations which are caught to feed captive fish. A 2012 study of fish catches for fish farms has shown that global declines of seabird populations, such as puffins and albatrosses, closely tracks the increase in farm-raised carnivorous fish. Fish farms produce much of our seafood, but most rely on wild-caught fish for feed, and pollution and disease are common concerns. Biohazards are associated with the use of industrial meat production in CAFOs. Increasingly, efficient production has a variety of externalized or unaccounted for costs. Land conversion from forest or grassland to crop fields increases soil erosion, which degrades water quality. Bacteria in the manure of the feedlots or liquid wastes in manure storage lagoons or holding tanks around hog farms escape into the environment from airborne fecal dust around feedlots or from breaches in the walls of a manure tank. When Hurricane Floyd hit North Carolina's coastal hog production region in 1999, some 10 million cubic meters of hog and poultry waste overflowed into local rivers, creating a dead zone in Pamlico Sound. While this was an especially severe disaster, smaller spills and leaks to groundwater from CAFOs are widespread throughout the United States. Constant use of antibiotics has been associated with antibiotic-resistant infections in hog-producing areas. 80% of all antibiotics used in the United States are administered to livestock. This massive and constant exposure kills off most bacteria, but occasional strains that resist the effects of the antibiotics survive, creating new strains that are untreatable in human hosts. Thus, overuse is slowly rendering our standard antibiotics ineffective for human health care, and thousands of people have died from antibiotic-resistant infections. Corn, soy, wheat, and rice are our staple crops in the United States. Meat consumption has risen worldwide. Most meat is raised in CAFOs. Air pollution, water pollution, and animal welfare are chief concerns of CAFOs.